can't meet you. I'd have to do this for all my fans. And then I said, I'll have my father take me. I know you come to New York. He said, well, I'm coming Thanksgiving. I said, well, can you meet me for 5 minutes? That's it, just 5 minutes, a picture and an autograph. He said, okay, I'll call you back in 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks later, my dad, Jerry Fitzgibbon, over here, you can wave to the crowd, was kind enough to chaperone me on the train to take me to meet Paul Lynde. We get to the hotel, and the hotel is on fire. Okay? And I said, oh my God, and my father's like, we have to get out of here, Cathy. And I said, I don't care if it burns down, we are not leaving. And then I saw Paul walk in, and I'm just going to read a little bit of my story, probably from there. Give me 1 second to find the spot. And this will be a brief reading just to get you an idea of kind of why I wrote this book, which I think it kind of says it all, and how I just feel very blessed to be here tonight because God answered both my dreams to write a book, meet Paul Lynde, and guess what? The book is about Paul Lynde. His life come full circle for me. I don't know how to thank God. It's been wonderful. I'm going to start out, just want to read the dedication page. This book is dedicated to Paul Lynde, who opened his heart to me, an ordinary girl, and made me feel like a star. And to my charming and generous dad, who escorted me on my first adventures with Paul, and to my loving mom, a true steel magnolia, who always believed in my writing. And for my sweet Haley and kind Ryan, who were patient and helpful while I wrote this book, I am beyond blessed and privileged to have you as my children. And to God for aligning the stars just right so Paul and I would meet. And I'm going to read just a little excerpt here. Paul met up with me and my dad, and I motioned to my dad, who was in the lobby, to come over. I introduced him as Jerry Fitzgibbon. They shook hands, and Paul said, boy, you really are fans. You stood here waiting for me in the smoke and the flames and with the entire fire department running around. My dad busted out laughing. We followed this great celebrity into a dining area in the hotel. The host stopped Paul. Paul used to spend $675 a night at that place. And the host said to him, I'm sorry, house rules. I can't let you in without a tie and jacket. Paul said, how can I get a tie and jacket when the hotel is on fire and all up to my feet? Paul was annoyed. Then he turned to me and my dad and said, let's go down to the Sherry Netherlands. So there I was with my dad, walking the streets of New York with Paul Lynde. He told us how he loved New York and the people in it and what a great city it truly was. We arrived and were seated at a table by the window. I had given Paul a red rose when I first introduced myself to him. I immediately noticed that every single table in the room had a red rose on it. My dad and I ordered a glass of wine, and Paul had a drink, and he asked the waiter to bring him an extra glass of water to put my rose in. I took out the page that I had photocopied his phone number from the library and showed him. Paul said, that's my number. He said it's been there for years, and no one ever called it. Then we talked about his life, career, and all the shows and movies he had done. He was both witty and serious. He answered every question I asked him and was so polite. He definitely had that movie star air about him, and yet he was so gracious. Paul was not quite the comedian you see on TV. He was more on the quiet side, bordering on shy, but every now and then he'd do a lower Paul Lynde voice. My dad laughed so hard, and I giggled. We were all talking, and soon it felt very comfortable in spite of my nervousness. At one point, Paul asked me, what did I want to be when I grow up? And I said, an author. Paul turned to my dad and asked, and what does she want from me? My dad said, nothing, she's just a devoted fan. I think at that moment, Paul felt secure. I was not after him for anything. This was so different, I later learned, than what he was used to most of the time. The conversation lasted almost 2 hours. At one point, I asked him if he made up the funny answers he gave on the Hollywood Squares. He answered so sincerely, no, dear, someone writes them for me. Well, they're funny anyway, I said. We talked at length. Then Paul said he had guests arriving and he had to get back to the pier. I asked him if I could have my dad take a picture of us. He said, sure. When the picture developed, Paul wrote on the back of it, and then he wrote something else on a piece of paper. He said, Kathy, you keep this paper. It's my home address. You come to LA and come visit me anytime. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was beyond what I prayed for. Paul shook hands with my dad, and I asked him if he could give him a kiss on the cheek. He gave a resounding yes, and I stood on my tiptoes and planted my first kiss. Then Paul picked up the rose, and the three of us walked out to the street together. I thanked him for meeting me and my dad and for spending so much time with us. He said he would be back in New York in a few weeks for Christmas and would call and invite me to see him again. I was mesmerized. I met the man of my dreams, this huge star, and now he was forming a friendship with me. I felt like the luckiest person in the entire world. This was just our beginning.
Very nice.
My dad and my mom and my sister Tricia, Maureen and Eileen all got to meet Paul over the years. Barbara and Arlene, we've had so much fun at Paul's house, and Barbara and I dancing with him in discos, and my God, he was so hilarious. And my friend Debbie, I'm not sure if she's here tonight, but she went with me all the way to Canada to see Paul. So over the next 5 years, we had a wonderful relationship. He called me every single Christmas, and all of you, and I have a lot of friends here from, my goodness, high school. My phone was always busy. We didn't have call waiting. We didn't have cell phones. And Paul would call me finally on Christmas Eve and say, I can't get through to your house. Every time I call you, the line is busy. And the rest of the book is about his life. It is a lot about Paul and I meeting and our fun and adventures together. And the rest of the book is about this man who struggled so hard, but never gave up on his dream to be an actor and a comedian, which he was both. And he struggled very hard, but he finally, after 9 years, he got noticed in Bye Bye Birdie, and then Bewitched as Uncle Arthur, which he was only in 11 shows. Most people don't know that. He always said they must run a lot of reruns because everybody would imitate him, Uncle Arthur. And Hollywood Squares was his claim to fame. And he didn't really want to be remembered that way, so a lovely lady named Daphne Wells Nichols took his last picture the summer before he passed away. And Paul had told her she had captured him in the way that he wants to be remembered. I remembered that, and I contacted her, and she was kind enough to let me use her photo of Paul that he wanted to be remembered by. So that's why I didn't go with the Hollywood Squares, because he really wanted this. And hopefully I've done a nice job. I mean, I have his whole life story, the good, the bad, and the hysterically funny, but it's all in there, and I hope you all enjoy it.